on books on tape, like Jerome loves to do, and they would take him miles. And that man, I'll just tell you this little incident. We were sitting with the king of Swaziland. Is that right, Cornell? And we're around the table with the king's men and his daughter, and they say, "Well, what language?" I want to get it straight because he always said, "What language is every language based from?" And he said, "The This ain't gonna help me."
Well, I heard that the princess that was eating with me
Yes.
about the Bantu languages that they spoke in that country.
Right. And
And she said that was what they used, and I told her that it's quite a European man that went around the planet telling everyone that Latin was a language that all languages were derived from.
mhm,
It was actually the Bantu language. And she said, really? And the king right-hand man, the old man that was sitting with you, said, that's right, but that's just how uninformed we are about a lot of things that have been going on around the world.
but when it was all said and done, I said, "Now, how in the devil did you know that? You just pulled it out of the." He said, "Studying, learning," and it was just awesome because the guy said, "Yeah, you're right." But I want to share with you some scriptures from the Bible. Uh, were black. So, but these are the Hebrews were dark-skinned African people, and this came from the book What They Never Told You. Our skins were black. My skin is black. Job said that. My skin is black. Job 30th chapter, 30th verse. They are black. Jeremiah 14th chapter and the second verse. His hair was like wool. Revelations 1:14. And this is the one that my son and his cousin went crazy over. Look not upon me because I am black. Solomon Songs, first chapter, the sixth verse. His feet were like brass. Revelations first chapter, the 15th verse. People refuse to believe it, but it's in the Bible. It's in the Word of God. And I love the way Nathaniel kind of brought this out. So, without any delay, my husband, Nat Radford Jr.
Yeah. I know most people, few people may not know about Emmett Till, but I have him included in this package. I remember it like it was yesterday. Jerome and I was just getting ready to start first grade in August 2055. I had just left DC and attended kindergarten here, getting ready to start in the first grade when that happened. But before it gets started, like I said, I'd like to apologize for not being as prepared as I wanted to be because of illnesses and stuff that had been going down. The problem that I have with history and black history is that basically most of us talk about the same stuff all the time, the same people. Just three or four people, and pretty much that's basically what we hear most of the time. But I'm going to engage the congregation here, and we're just going to go through a few people here. And I'm going to see, as I point to the people, I want to see if, who recognizes who. Okay, the first one here. Okay, good.
And when they looked up, and
want to engage the congregation here, and we're just gonna go through a few people here. And I'm gonna say, you know, as I point to the people, I want to see if, you know, who recognizes who. Okay, the first one here,
Malcolm X.
okay, good.
Sojourner Truth. Third Martin.
Good. Clayton Powell,
Good.
Ernest Douglas.
Is that the Earl Jones?
They can't see it. It's a clear.
that's, Paul Robeson,
Paul Rhodes, yeah.
okay,
Drew.
Marcus Garvey,
Who are we pointing to now?
Booker T,
Yeah.
Booker T. Washington, Langston Hughes, okay, right. Nkrumah Kwame, the first Prime Minister of Ghana, and the President of the Republic. And of course, I know everybody know who he is. Okay, if you look at this group here, multiply that times at least thousands, or close to a million, of black people that have done things that were comparable to what they've done and greater. It's basically what we're dealing with. We basically talk about the same people and the same stuff all the time, which, you know, really doesn't help us as much when we talk about something that we already know. We have such a rich history. There's so many things that black people have done, and excuse me for having to sit down, because it's what I'm gonna have to end up doing because of the feeling I've been having. But, all of this so important. I think it was Napoleon that said history is basically a lie that is agreed upon. That history, a lot of stuff has been left out. You know, basically, the narratives for black folks over the years have pretty much have been, you came from these primitive people, these savages.
Earl Jones.
They can't see it. It's a clear.
That's, I think it was Napoleon that said history is basically a lie that is agreed upon. And when it comes to our history, a lot of stuff has been left out. You know, basically, the narrative of black folks over the years have pretty much have been, you came from these primitive people, these savages, and everything that you are, we made you. But we know better than that. That's not true. We often hear people talk about their European descent. And if you go deep enough, you'll find out there's really no such thing as an original European origin. Because no one could inhabit Europe if the ones that could lose their melanin survived, and the ones that couldn't died out. The ones that survived, instead of the noses being wide and flat, became long and keen to adapt to the cold climate. Their hair, instead of short and curly, became long and straight. That was also a climate thing. And over ages, their skin became lighter and lighter and lighter. I'm a firm believer that the black man or people of color are the mother and father of everyone on this earth. Now, when we say black, what do we mean when we say black? We mean black, brown, red, yellow. We're talking about 90% of the people on the planet. We divide into columns. You're better than Bobby because you're a writer, or you were this because you're dark. You're that. And we have friends. Well, I'm not regular black. I'm Puerto Rican. I'm Trinidadian. I'm this. I'm that. Nobody wants to be black, but they play with that color thing. He's not black. He's brown Mediterranean. See, the issue is that we're the dominant population on the world stage. We're 90% versus 10%. And if that 90% woke up and surrounded that 10%, we could make a devilish move. They could make a devilish move. This stuff begins today. You know, they have us all so confused. Like, history is about more than read and write. It starts with knowledge itself. And without that, that had kind of stemmed us over the years. One of the problems I have is that we basically, instead of going all the way back to the pyramids and more doing ancient times and working our way back, Einstein said that what happened 10,000 years ago shares the same time space as something that happened a minute ago. And we need to stay out of this small room and get involved in this big room. And that's what we need to do with our history. Instead of going back to slavery and stopping at that point, we need to work our way back a little deeper than that. And when you do, we find out that if you go back beyond 1500 AD, you won't find a statue, a monument, a painting, or anything of any sort that is not African in some form or fashion. Because we were always there. And you can kind of pretty much see where the world is going now. The world is more colors coming back, and I think it's going to be kind of like it was in the beginning. When most people talk about their history, they call it patriotic, they call it patriotism. But see, when we start talking about our history, they call us rebels, Afrocentric, and radical. Our history, for some reason, is offensive to other people. Why is that? Because basically, when you tell the truth about things that have been told about themselves, other people tend to get black eyes. That's basically what it's all about.
That's right.
When you start looking at this thing, history is pretty much what it implies. His story. Not mine.
Yeah.
And then when you start looking at ours, I said, my story, I gave it another name. I call it mystery. Because the more you start learning about us, you know, you wonder, oh, man, this thing is deep. But Alex Haley, he went to his relatives. The only people that can give 6 different answers to a question like that. We got black, we got Negroes, we got American, we got Afro-American. We have a lot of people. I'm not from Africa, I'm from St. Louis. I'm not from Africa, I'm from D.C. Mm-hmm. Well, it's all about your descent. We're African descent. But, you know, if you look at the world map, you know, you have Italy, thus you have Italians. China, you have Chinese. You look at Germany, you have Germans. Where is black land? Where is Negro land? Where is color land? Where is any of that? We are American, part American, and we are of African descent. But see, it's been all about confusion. If your parents were on the plane and you were in Japan, and they had you on the plane in Japan, does that make you Japanese? You know, it's like I say, it's all confusion. But I'm going to take you to, Regine, did you pass those out?
Yes, I did.
Okay. I'm going to introduce you to Emmett Till. Like I say, this happened in '55 when I was in the 1st grade. This is the young man here on the first page. This is him on the next page. This is the lady that accused him of whistling at him. Carolyn Bryant, down in the corner. This is him in his casket. This is how brutally beaten he was. His mother had them put it on in the Jet magazine and in the newspaper so the world could see what they had done to her son. Okay, the next page are the people that were responsible for all that. The lady on the far right and the family. They got away with it, not guilty, and came back 2 weeks later and sold their story to a magazine, you know, admitting everything that they had done. And they got away with it. Fast forward to last year, this lady, 80-some years old, come back and say that she lied. And she's still living. She's the only one still living. You know how many people lost their lives and how much stuff went on behind that? You know, it's you know, sad. And you still have people around today that, if they had their way, would still be going on today. I don't want to talk too much about, you know, Jim Crow and what it is. This explains it to you. Some of the practices and stuff that they had back during the day. This is a restroom for whites in Louisville, Kentucky, in the front. In the back is the dining room for black people, right in the back of it. But during the Jim Crow era, you know, if you was walking on the sidewalk, you see a white person coming, you had to get off the sidewalk. They couldn't play checkers together in the street. There was just a lot of real crazy things going on back then. The Jim Crow era ended back in around 64, 65. We're not dealing with Jim Crow today, but we're dealing with his cousin, James Crow Esquire. which is a much more sophisticated system.
Yeah.
Very sophisticated. You look at what's going on today, I don't want to mention what my cousin talked about with 45. I have to try to keep my blood pressure down. It's a lot of stuff that's going on.
Yeah.
But you know, back before integration, we had a lot going on when we were segregated, which integration was good in its own way, but we lost a lot when we integrated. Basically, the Europeans found out a way to control our resources and our money. When we were segregated, we had our own communities, and our communities, the doctors, the lawyers, and everybody stayed together. And we aggregated our money at least 5 or 6 times before we let it out of the communities. You know, we don't do that now. We just basically give everything up. According to Dr. Claude Anderson, we had some merchants go in our neighborhood on 8th Street trying to do some business with the Koreans. And they had offered them like 50% discount on wholesale products that they were buying. And they told them, not interested. Said, not even at 50% off? He said, you black folks don't understand. We support our own. Black folks are the only ones that buy from any and everybody.
That's right.
Even people that don't support them or whatever. You know, I remember back when Trayvon Martin, you know, when that trial went down with him, and I seen people around in the street protesting is good. Hands up, don't shoot. Hands up, don't shoot. I say hands up, don't spin.
Amen.
Don't spin. But, you know, sometimes you have a hard time trying to get people to understand these things and get them to stick together. But I think, like I say, before integration, we had 8 baseball leagues. There's some of the best baseball players in the world. And we said if we could only get one black man to play the white team, we'd give up all our leagues. And that's when Jackie Robinson came in. And you see how he was treated when he came in. Back between, right after slavery, in the 1860s, up until the 1920s, we owned more land. We owned a lot of things. We had Black Wall Street in Oklahoma. We had Black Wall Street in Winston-Salem. We had a black shipyard in Baltimore. We had a whole lot of things going. In Winston-Salem, blacks owned a bus company. Now, I'm not talking about 2 or 3 buses. I'm talking about 500 buses that basically transported blacks and whites. Insurance companies, black banks, we lost all of that. You know, we had, in Oklahoma, we had Black Wall Street. They were so powerful. People around the world was getting ready to do business with them. Half of Europe, people all over the country, but the Europeans wasn't having it. And that's when the riots broke out in Oklahoma in 1920-21. The local sheriff commandeered a jet, a helicopter, and he dropped sticks of dynamite on the 3 main corridors in Wall Street, Black Wall Street. This group called Gap Band, they're from Tulsa, Oklahoma. In fact, their name derived from the initials of those 3 main streets that were bombed: Greenmont, Arch, and Pine. And when you hear them sing that song, "You Dropped the Bomb on Me," that's not just a song, that's something that actually happened in true history. You know, there were so many things that went on back during the Jim Crow eras. We had our own soldiers. The Tuskegee Airmen had to actually get up on the train to let the Nazi prisoners sit down because they were black. And we talking about somebody that's fighting for our country, you know. And that's basically how bad it was. But, you know, I wanted to talk about a couple of experiences that I had. I had talked about us being divided and conquered and just how bad it can get sometimes. I was in Haiti back in 2014, and I was coming out of this rest area, and I heard this black guy talking to his wife, who was white, which it doesn't matter, and he was saying that the Haitians weren't black, and I had to intervene on that one, you know. I'm like, come on, bro. You know, he said, I tell you what you do. You ask the Jamaicans, are they black, and see what they say. I say, I know what they're saying. They're saying what they've been taught. I say, but if you really want to talk about somebody of Jamaican descent in my country, probably more pro-black than anybody else. That's Harry Belafonte. I said, but I'll tell you what, since we're in Haiti, I said, I'm going to tell you a quick story. And this story is a true story, but it was so embarrassing they tried to leave it out of history. The French soldiers came over into Haiti, and they started mixing with the Haitians. They became lighter. They called them mulattoes. And they thought that they were better than the darker soldiers, the Haitian soldiers. So General Rochambeau gave a gala party for all the wives of the mulatto soldiers. And at the party, he said, I have some presents for you ladies. He said, go in the back and open up the boxes. And when they opened up the boxes, it was the heads of all of them husbands. And he said, I have less contempt, regard for you yellow Negroes as I do the blackest of the black. And he did not say Negroes, by the way. Anyway, I ran into a young lady one day down near Virginia Tech. She was, I guess you could say fairly chocolate, dark complexion, whatever. Her and I got to talk, and she was working in Bojangles, and she was telling me her husband was from D.C., and he was African American. I didn't say anything to her that day because there was a line, you know, so the next day I approached her about it. And I told her, I asked her, I said, you said yesterday you were African American. Your husband was. I said, what are you? She said, well, I'm from Trinidad. I said, yeah, but what are you? Well, all I know is I'm from Trinidad. I said, well, you know, when they dropped us off from Africa, they dropped you guys off in Central and South America, and they dropped us off in North America. Duh. I mean, you know.
That's right.
My grandson, he brought some homework back last year. And it was talking about the University of Timbuktu, Mali. And I noticed on his paper, where he had graded and they had said that the University of Timbuktu, you know, back in the day, was filled with Greek and Roman books. I had to take issue with that one. Wait a minute. The University of Timbuktu in Mali was the world's first university. Europe was in the Dark Ages when the Moors, the Africans, came out of Morocco in 700 AD and taught them reading, writing, and arithmetic. they wouldn't know their name if they seen it on anything. So how can we have their book flooding to World's First University? And my thing is, my grandkids will do what they have to do to pass in this system, but in my household, they will know the truth.
Yes.
Amen.
And that's the thing, and that's why we have to better educate ourselves so that we can guide our own.
Yes.
The school system is fine and good as far as math and science, but we have to be very careful when it comes to sociology, social issues, and history. Because I'm telling you, there's a lot of things that we've done that haven't been mentioned and have been left out. You know, we had another situation. I was trying to remember what it was, but I've pretty much almost forgotten. But you know, why is all of this stuff important? See, it's like this. What you do for yourself depends on what you think of yourself.
Mm-hmm.
And what you think of yourself depends on what you know of yourself.
Mm-hmm.
And what you know of yourself depends on what you have been told. If you don't discover who you are and find out about your own story, somebody else gonna tell it for you. Malcolm X once said that of all our studies, it is history that is most qualified to reward our research. And also the makeup of a human being's self-esteem, self-image, and self-concept, especially when it comes to our family history and our racial history, is affecting us because of what we've been fed.
Mm-hmm.
But you can rest assured that 50% of black people and black children self-esteem is contingent upon how high or how low they're thinking about themselves, or the self-image or the self-esteem is contingent upon what they have been fed.
That's right.
Amen.
That's right.
Right.
So, you know, like I say, our history is very important. We have a very rich history.
Mm-hmm.
And there are some things that I could tell you today where you would probably think that this guy's crazy. But I put the stuff out there, and I won't do it today, but all you have to do is do your research. But I'm telling you, history, we have pretty much the richest history on the planet. And you know, one of the things that I kind of frown on is basically we tend to be the only people on the planet that actually entrust the education of our kids to people of other culture.
Mm-hmm.
And that's dangerous. That's why we have to monitor, you know,
Amen.
what they're doing in school when they're being told, you know. And it was something else that I wanted to mention. We often talk about we've been fed, you know, through the school system. They teach us about Herodotus being the father of history. They teach us about Socrates. They teach us about Plato. They teach us about Archimedes. But they don't tell you who their scholars were, who taught them.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Archimedes went over into Africa and he discovered the people with this hydrostatic system that drew water. He copied that and come back to Greece, and around the world all of a sudden it's the Archimedean screw.
Mm-hmm.
they have us celebrate Hippocrates as the father of medicine. I encourage you to go back 2,000 years before Hippocrates and look up Imhotep and see what he did. They also have us celebrate Sigmund Freud as the father of psychology. We're talking about a man, basically a junkie. In fact, when he was in the hospital with his jaw being devoured with cancer, he couldn't stop smoking 20 cigarettes a day, lying in his dying bed with cancer. That's who they want us to celebrate as father of psychology. I wanted to tell you about another gentleman by the name of Toussaint Overture. There was a little college up there in Philadelphia called Girard College. They had problems with bringing black people into the college because it was basically white. So let me tell you about a little history on that college. There was a young man by the name of Toussaint Overture. He defeated Napoleon. He was from Haiti. And he was a very great warrior in battle. And he knew he was coming close to the end of his life. And he had accumulated some $7.5 million. So he entrusted his money with Captain Eric Girard, a white ship captain, to leave with his family and for his cause. When Toussaint Overture died, Captain Eric Girard opened up Girard College for whites only. And he bought coal for poor whites, and none of that money went for the black cause. Here we are, all this much time, all this years later, got to fight just to get in this college to be educated from stolen money. And that's kind of why, this history is important. They have us going from kindergarten to the 12th grade, first semester in college, pretty much study European history. And they call themselves sounding inclusive when they start talking about black history, but all they talk about is about 3 or 4 people. And that's why I encourage us to, start exploring more and find out how rich our what we've put into civilization. We've accomplished a lot, on this world stage. There was, if you go to look at all the inventors, pretty much everything we use today, most of it was invented by blacks. You can look pretty much most of them up. But what happened back in the day, back in the late 1700s, there was an attorney general. His last name was Black. He passed a law where you had to have a citizenship to get a patent. So the slaves, anything that they came up with, what happened to them, But back in the day, and even today, we're still living in as we know, a racial society. Over the last 500 years, there's never been a year, a month, a week, a day, a minute where racism haven't been a dominant reality. But we need to quit looking at white supremacy with logical analysis You know, these are the people that came up with this phenomenon called manifest destiny, which was basically hallucinatory insanity. You know, and it became law. You know, they murdered people, their morals, everything was about taking. They didn't care about decency or nothing else. It was just all about power. Look at what's going on today. Racism isn't just a word. It's not just a noun. It's a verb. It's an action. It's a system. It's all ingrained in the system. We have today, let's talk about the flag, the Confederate flag. Well, we have people carrying the flags around today. I had a guy who paint my house came up here to Baltimore. I guess he thought it was safe up this way. He was going to Lincoln Tech, and he had a Confederate flag on his bike, and they almost stomped him to death. Now, he was one of the few that I think his intention was kind of naive as to what the flag represented to him. But for most people, it's offensive. And they tried to get around it. But that flag is basically treasonous. But in this system, they don't care about treason. You look at some of the stuff that's going on today. When Robert E. Lee surrendered to General Grant in Appomattox, Robert E. Lee told his soldiers, fold up your flags, put them in the attics, and never bring them back out. It said this particular flag is one of treason. He didn't keep them in the attics. And they tried to justify carrying these flags, but if you look at the man that designed the flag, William Thompson, what he said, I am celebrating the Aryans' dominance over the colored race. This flag will thus be emblematic of our cause. How can you debate what the person that bought the flag out? South Carolina started carrying the flag basically because of the northern slave aggression, and they wouldn't return their runaway slaves. South Carolina also was probably one of the most stubborn states to keep flying the flag. They had it in the capital. Had to force them to bring it down. But see, what I'd like people to know is, if it had not been for 900 armed black slaves, there would be no state of South Carolina, because they helped save South Carolina from the Yamasee Indians. If you're going down 95, before you get into Georgia, you'll see a sign say Yamasee, South Carolina. It was named after those Indians. You know. But there are a lot of things that I would like to talk about, and I say it's a lot of things going to be left out today, but I appreciate my brother giving me the opportunity to come here to speak.
Yes.
And I hope that somebody maybe heard something or learned something they hadn't heard before. That's my thing, you know. Not just talking about the same stuff that basically everybody talks about all the time, but basically that somebody gets something new out of it. And I thank you guys.
It's hard for me to imagine a presentation being more powerful than that. The speaker was apologizing for not being as prepared as he wanted to be because he's been going through some physical challenges, and I just have I'm not saying he can't be, but it's just hard to imagine, don't you think so?
Yes, sir. Yeah. Amen. Yeah.
Yes, he is my brother. I didn't introduce him as my brother. We are blood brothers, grew up together, got in trouble together. At least him and Randy got in trouble together. I was too young and they wouldn't let me go. But I'm also thinking that brother got involved and interested in Black history in similar ways that I got involved in the computer. One day, just looking at the computer a whole lot more, because I think what has been said needs to be in our heads and in our hearts. Yes, I see brother, as we call him, Nathaniel Jr., Radford Jr., raising his hand. Yes.
Yeah, there's one thing I forgot to mention, especially since we had, you know, a couple of soldiers in here. When I was talking about the racism thing and the treasonous thing, I don't know how many of us realize that a big part of your Army bases were all named after Confederate generals. Fort Hood, Fort A.P. Hill, Fort Bragg, Fort Gordon, Fort Pope, Fort Rucker, Fort Lee, you name it. All of them were actually named after Confederate generals. And the one thing that I had forgot to mention also, we were talking about when slavery ended. A lot of people didn't really listen to all the clauses in the Constitution. It says slavery is ended with the exception that you commit a crime. So when you go to prison, you're pretty much a slave. And you look at how many Black people are in this country, you look at how many are in prison versus other people. So if you want to be a slave, that's just what I try to teach the youngsters. Just keep going up. You can either be a candidate for Penn State or the state pen.
One more hand, and I'm going to recognize it, but I have to tell you, this day did not take place just by Purry and Purry alone. Most of the people here would not let me do all that I intended to do. So I want to thank you. This is a collective day which everybody shared in, and I just appreciated it so much. I think I saw my other brother's hand.
Just 30 seconds.
Yes, all of the seconds you want.
I'd like to say that the presentation was excellent.
Yes.
And it went beyond my expectations.
Oh, good.
And the one thing I will add, brother, and I have educators sitting around here. When you have that much knowledge, you can do it in series. A little bit at this time, a little bit at another time, and a little bit another time.
Amen.
And the only thing I'm sitting here, thoughts are going around in my head is, how can we get this man certified? And I see Jerome laughing, in agreement, certified to push his product into places where we really need to push them.
Yes, sir.